Number 10. The grappling gun. In the original comics, Batman was known for getting around using his trusty bat rope. When Batman was adapted for the silver screen in 1989, his gear was given a much needed upgrade in the form of the grappling gun. The grappling gun fires a grappling hook and uses a winch system to pull the Dark Knight to his destination. It wasn't long before this gadget was adopted by the comics and became a mainstay of Batman's utility belt. Over the years, the power of the grappling gun has varied, sometimes not even being able to pull the weight of 2 people, and sometimes being used to dangle a full bank safe, as in Batman Forever. What is surprisingly powerful about this gadget is that we are frequently shown the grappling hook being fired with such force that it is able to break through concrete walls before finding a stable anchor point. Number 9. The Batarang. Probably the most recognizable of Batman's gadgets. The Batarang has taken many forms over the years, sometimes just being a bat-shaped boomerang, and sometimes being more of a throwing star. What makes the Batarang such a powerful weapon is its versatility. It has been used as a throwing weapon, a climbing tool, and a cutting tool, not to mention all the variations such as the remote control Batarang, the electric Batarang, the explosive Batarang, or the rarely seen police whistle Batarang. Whatever their use, Batman has taken full advantage of this relatively simple gadget, proving that it is more than the sum of its parts. Number 8. The lie detector. Batman is really good at getting information from people, often by dangling criminals off of buildings or threatening to break every bone in their bodies. This has proven to be an effective method for the Dark Knight, and he has years of experience and training in this area, but it never hurts to be sure that the information criminals are giving you is accurate. That's what makes his built-in lie detector so effective. A newer addition on this list, this heads-up COWL display analyzes a person's heart rate, pupil dilation, and other vital signs, and then lets Batman know if the thug he's interrogating is telling the truth. This is a gadget that is so powerful that I actually don't like it. Call me old-fashioned, but I like the tension that comes with Batman having to use his skills as the world's greatest detective to get the information he needs. Having a computer that tells him every time someone is lying just feels boring to me.
And it's 7. Crazy Quilt. After his eyes were injured in a robbery, Crazy Quilt underwent an experimental procedure which resulted in him seeing nothing but blindingly bright color. This, of course, somehow turned him into an insane criminal. How insane? Well, first of all, he tried to steal color itself, which no one ever figured out how he planned to do. And second of all, his powers were basically constantly having a illicit substance trip, that is an acronym, that is like LED, which affects literally no one but himself. Even when Crazy Quilt got a helmet that allowed him to project his like crazy eye color lights at people, all Batman and Robin needed to do was like turn a mirror on him and reflect the beam back, and he was done. In all honesty, I don't even think Batman needed to do much here to actually embarrass him. I mean, like, the dude calls himself Crazy Quilt. I think that says enough. Like, I don't know a single person who is scared of quilts. Like, what do you think this name is gonna do? And even if he didn't name himself, I feel like that just adds an extra layer to it, you know? Like, why do you think that they called you Crazy Quilt? Because you want to steal color? No, it's because you're crazy and don't scare anyone. And at 6, the Gotham Mob. Batman's "You have eaten well" speech from year 1 may just be the most iconic moment in Batman history. It's the definitive Batman moment in the definitive Batman origin, as the Dark Knight formally announces his presence to the Gotham underworld with an entrance that the Kool-Aid Man would have been very proud of. After blowing up the dining room wall of a Gotham mansion where Carmine Falcone was hosting a get-together with the big criminals of the city, including GCPD Commissioner Loeb, the Dark Knight proceeds to deliver an all-timer of a monologue, vowing that from this moment on, none of you are safe, before extinguishing the last light in the room and leaving in hushed silence. Prior to this sequence, every single mobster and crook in that room thought themselves to be untouchable, but in one fell swoop, Batman eliminates any sense of security that they may have had and brings them crashing back down to Earth. It's one of the most iconic Batman moments of all time, incredibly intimidating, and considering how the whole mob was just bested by one man, pretty embarrassing. Halfway through into number 5, Condiment King. I think this is pretty obvious. I mean, like, Condiment King was meant to be an embarrassing villain. but the first meeting between him and Batman in Batman the Animated Series is absolutely amazing. The Condiment King first appeared in the episode Make 'Em Laugh, voiced by Stuart Pankin. He was whimsical and made many condiment-based puns. For example, the big bad bat guy, I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. However, Batman wasn't down for games, since as Condiment King said cut the mustard, Batman just punches him in the gut, much to Condiment King's surprise. He falls down and was like, you punched me! Like, yeah, of course he did. And then Batman proceeds to tell him point blank, look, Mustard Man, or whatever you call yourself, obviously you're new at this, so I'll go easy on you as long as you give back the loot and promise never to try this again. To which the Sultan of Sauces, he slips on ketchup and falls off the balcony he was standing on, grabbing onto a neon sign to save his life. So yeah, definitely deserving of this list. In it for the Riddler. Last time I talked about a specific instance in which Batman taunts Nigma in front of Green Arrow, but Batman literally solving any riddle that Nigma sends his way is pretty much always humiliating. Like every single time, Nigma thinks that he's come up with like the most genius thing, or that Batman will never solve it, or at least he thinks it will be a tough time solving it, and then Batman solves it and Nigma is just left defeated. Like I know it's not like in the typical sense embarrassing, but I feel like at this point like the Riddler should have just like given up, okay? He's been beaten so many times. He's the Condiment King of the recognizable and popular rogues. He doesn't really do much, but he's there to kind of like toy with you until like, you know, the world's greatest detective actually uses his brain. You see, if the Riddler had revealed the whole 3 Joker thing instead of the Mobius chair with a riddle, okay, that would have been something. But instead, he's like a walking fudgesicle stick. He doesn't really need Batman to embarrass him, he does it on his own. Although I haven't seen the Batman yet, so maybe he's better in that movie.
Number 3, the voice imitator. A variation of this gadget first appeared in the 60s Batman show, where it was used by Alfred to impersonate Batman while on the phone with Commissioner Gordon. A more versatile and useful version of this gadget later appeared in the Arkham Knight video game, where it was an essential tool in helping Batman defeat armed thugs in encounters. This amazing device is capable of mimicking various villains' voice patterns, giving Batman the ability to trick the various goons into walking into traps. This is an incredibly powerful tool for someone like Batman, who uses shadows and subterfuge to stalk his prey, and it's one of the gadgets I would love to see incorporated into the comics. Number 2, the Bat Beacon. First appearing in Batman number 406, this device allowed the Caped Crusader to summon a giant swarm of bats to help cover his escape from a corrupt and dangerous SWAT team during the first year of his career. This is a deceptively powerful device, as it is so small that it can fit into the heel of Batman's boot, but can send a signal miles away to the Batcave, prompting all the bats to come towards the signal. Batman has appeared surrounded by swarms of bats in the years since this gadget's appearance, but to my knowledge, we have yet to see this gadget explicitly used again, so it's hard to say how often or if Batman still uses it. It was of course adapted for live action in a similar sequence in Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. Number 1, the Universal Tool. Described as a digital Swiss Army knife, the Universal Tool is powerful because of its usefulness and its versatility. It features a miniature computer with various wires which allows it to interface with different devices, functioning as a digital lockpick and a bomb deactivator. The handle can be removed to reveal a miniature toolkit which contains lockpicks, wire strippers and cutters, as well as a variety of screwdrivers. As if that weren't enough, its handle can be used as a hammer, although to be fair, anything can be a hammer if you swing it hard enough. This gadget stopped seeing much use as technology evolved and many of its functions got absorbed into different gadgets, such as the remote hacking device. However, it is worthy of respect due to its many years of service and the novelty of Batman having a full toolkit as one of the gadgets on his tool belt. Number 10, Hush. After having success with the character, writing limited series such as The Long Halloween and Dark Victory, writer Jeff Loeb achieved a long-time goal and was assigned to the main Batman monthly title. With art by superstar comic book artist and co-creator of Image Comics Jim Lee, Loeb set out to craft a 12-issue mystery with a new villain, Hush, pulling the strings of a plot to destroy the Dark Knight by manipulating some of his most iconic enemies and allies and turning them against him. Hush has some unforgettable moments, such as one of the best fights between Batman and Superman in the character's histories, and the art by Lee is one of the most definitive modern interpretations of the character, but Hush doesn't quite stick the landing when it comes to crafting an engaging mystery, as the identity of Hush is somewhat predictable in a way that, say, the identity of the Holiday Killer in Loeb's Long Halloween is not. Although it is definitely worth a read, it hasn't had the permanent effects on the characters and the continuity as some of the other events on this list. Number 9. The Wedding. After years of playing cat and mouse, Batman and Catwoman finally decided to tie the knot during Tom King's run on Batman. The lead up to the nuptials featured a lot of interesting stories dissecting the nature of the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, and asking the central question of, can Batman be happy and still be Batman? This culminated in the Wedding album issue, which promised to feature the Bat and the Cat finally tying the knot. Unfortunately, Catwoman gets cold feet and the wedding doesn't happen, but what makes the Wedding album issue special is, like the Superman Lois Lane wedding issue that inspired it, this issue brings back past Batman artists such as Frank Miller, Neil Adams, Tim Sale, Greg Capullo, and Jim Lee, with each influential artist drawing a different page of the comic. So while the story itself isn't great and feels like a bit of a fake out, all of those artists drawing for one book makes it worth checking out. Number 8. Dark Knight's Metal. Dark Knight's Metal is the reunion between writer Scott Snyder and artist Greg Capullo, and is the payoff to several plot points they introduced on their extremely popular runs on Batman, such as The Court of the Owls, Death of the Family, and Zero Year, all of which just narrowly missed out on being featured on this list. It tells the story of the creature Barbados, who assembles a group of evil Batmen from across the dark multiverse in an attempt to destroy the multiverse. Each of the evil Batmen are distinct and dangerous, such as the Murder Machine, who was a Batman who was taken over by a murderous rogue AI of Alfred the Butler, the Red Death, who lost all of his sidekicks and in order to be fast enough to stop future crimes, absorbed the powers and consciousness of the Flash, the Devastator, who gave himself a doomsday virus in order to kill his universe's evil Superman, and most notably, the Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is a version of the character who was forced to kill the Joker and was infected with a Joker toxin, which gave him the same murderous impulses of his old enemy. Dark Knight's Metal is a really fun story that introduces a lot of memorable new enemies for Batman and the rest of the Justice League, but its cosmic nature may not appeal to readers who are more fond of a grounded detective Batman. Number 7. The Bat Credit Card. First appearing in the 1997 film Batman and Robin, this gadget has been the source of laughter, scorn, and even a few internet memes. But allow me to play devil's advocate for a moment here. On a list of surprisingly powerful gadgets, you have to admit, a billionaire's credit card is really powerful. Not only does it probably have an almost unlimited credit limit, but as it says in the corner, it's good through forever, meaning that Batman never has to worry about replacing it. All jokes aside, Batman is known for carrying around large amounts of cash on him to pay for incidentals, such as in Batman Year 1 when he breaks into a men's clothing store and pays for a suit in order to escape the police. It doesn't seem that weird to me that he would have a card at the ready for certain occasions. It may be silly, but I can see why he never leaves the cave without it. Number 6. The Bat Shield. Appearing in the iconic 60s television show, the Bat Shield is a shield that unfolds from Batman's utility belt to provide cover from gunfire for the Caped Crusader and his sidekick. What is surprisingly powerful about this gadget is not only its portability, but the amount of gunfire it's able to absorb despite being made of incredibly thin material. This is a gadget that I'm surprised hasn't shown up in the comics, as it would be incredibly useful for protecting civilians when pinned down under gunfire. A similar gadget shows up in the Arkham video games, being wielded by Robin, but it has yet to make a leap to the comic book pages. Number 5. Plastic Explosive. A useful gadget for when Batman needs to tear down a wall or destroy something in a hurry. This gadget was a mainstay in Batman's utility belt before being replaced with more purpose-built explosives like bat bombs, explosive gels, or the magnetic charges seen in The Batman. What made the plastic explosives so impressively powerful was their size. In illustrations provided by DC Comics of the contents of the utility belt, it is shown that these tiny bombs were compact enough to fit in the tiny vials lining the belt. Not only that, but each vial seemed to contain up to 5 explosives. This implies that each explosive was less than an inch large. Considering the amount of damage each charge is shown to be capable of, that is undeniably impressive. Number 4. kryptonite ring. Gifted to Batman by Superman in case the Man of Steel were ever to go rogue, this ring with a small kryptonite gem was essential in helping Batman hold his own against the Man of Steel when Superman fell under Poison Ivy's control in Batman number 612. Kryptonite is of course very powerful when used against Superman, but what makes it even more impressive is how far Batman was able to get with so little. Superman often goes up against and beats foes like Metallo, who has an entire heart made of kryptonite. The fact that Superman felt this would be enough kryptonite to stop him says a lot about how devastating the effects of kryptonite can be, as well as the amount of faith he has in Batman's abilities. Number 3. No Man's Land. When DC Comics associate editor Jordan B. Gorfinkel wanted to prove himself and be promoted to a full editor, he knew he had to come up with something big. He spent a day typing out an idea and sent it to Denny O'Neil, who at this point was in charge of the entire Batman line. Gorfinkel left for vacation, and when he returned was informed by O'Neil that he had loved his idea and had run it up to top brass at DC, who had approved it. For all of 1999, all of the Batman comics would come together to tell a massive 86-part crossover story that would be known as No Man's Land. This massive undertaking required unprecedented collaboration and organization, as they told the story of Gotham City being hit by a massive earthquake and cut off from the rest of the world. Gotham is abandoned by the United States government and left to fend for itself as the various supervillains all take over different sections of the city as a desperate Bat family and GCPD try to protect the survivors and bring order back to the city. No Man's Land was a smash success, and to this day is the crossover event that all others are compared to. Number 2. A Death in the Family. When Dick Grayson quit being Robin and became the hero Nightwing, he was replaced by the second Robin, Jason Todd. Jason was a homeless street urchin who Batman took in after he caught him stealing the tires off of the Batmobile in Crime Alley. Unlike Dick Grayson, Jason was rebellious and impulsive, often clashing with the Dark Knight. This characterization led to him becoming unpopular with readers. This resulted in one of the biggest publicity stunts of DC Comics history. In the Death of the Family arc, Jason travels to the Middle East in an attempt to find his biological mother. In Batman number 427, Jason finds her but is captured by the Joker, who tortures him by beating him with a crowbar, leaving him to die in a warehouse that has been rigged to explode. Batman arrives at the warehouse just as it explodes, leaving Jason's ultimate fate a mystery. The back cover of this issue included 2 900 numbers that readers could call in order to vote on whether Batman would be able to rescue the young boy wonder or if he would perish in the explosion. Like a really high-stakes American Idol. The writing team prepared 2 different versions of the next issue in order to be prepared for either outcome. In the 35 hours that voting was open, they received 10,614 votes, with 5,271 voting for Robin's survival and 5,343 voting for his death. The readers had spoken, and Jason Todd was killed off in Batman number 428 due to a margin of 72 votes. Number 1. The Dark Knight Returns. Although he was a dark and brooding vigilante when first created, when the Comics Code Authority was introduced in the 1950s in a misguided effort to preserve the innocence of America's youth, Batman adventures became less and less grim before eventually taking on the more fantastical and campy tone that was adapted for the 60s Adam West TV show. Although this show is what took Batman from niche comic book character to cultural icon, its fun and silly take on the character did result in general audiences viewing Batman as a goofy crime fighter rather than a grim avenger. Despite his stories in the comics returning to a darker tone by the time of the 70s, the public perception of the character remained. This changed when superstar writer and artist Frank Miller came on the scene and created the 4-part miniseries Batman the Dark Knight, or as it was retitled in subsequent reissues, The Dark Knight Returns. Dark Knight Returns tells the story of a retired 55-year-old Batman who lives in a corrupt and crime-ridden Gotham that is under constant attack by the vicious mutant gang. Batman comes out of retirement and unleashes his brutal brand of vigilante justice on the criminals of Gotham. Dark Knight Returns is widely considered to be one of the greatest Batman stories ever told, and along with Alan Moore's Watchmen, was directly responsible for comic books being taken seriously as a medium that wasn't only for children. It returned Batman to his status as a dark and brooding vigilante, and along with Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie, shifted the general audience's perception of Batman from campy 60s star to the status of dark brooding vigilante he enjoys today.
In 10, The Flash. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but his story is really humiliating when you think about it. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robins, but they kept dying left, right, and center, obviously, but mostly because of voter call-ins. So understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods, and he just basically started killing every one of his villains, which honestly seems more realistic to me. Like maybe instead you quit fighting crime, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. This eventually leads him to Barry Allen, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers for understandable reasons. So Batman then uses his various rogues weapons to fight Barry and knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into one being, and they turn into a evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind is trapped inside of Bruce's body. Now, some of you may not consider this humiliating, but I think it counts, because like I'd classify that as pretty embarrassing, getting locked inside someone else's body when they're using your superpowers. So yeah, I'll at least put it at number 10. And at 9, Lord Death. Lord Death was a secondary villain that has not appeared too many times in the comic books. He also has a rather peculiar ability. He can't actually die. Whenever he's on the verge of death, Lord Death will actually enter a trance-like state and resurrect himself. How does one stop an enemy that can always come back no matter how many times you kill him, you ask? Well, the answer for Batman at least was a rocket. But seemingly not a bat rocket, which is hella unfortunate. Batman straps Lord Death to a rocket and then sends him up into space. Yeah, where the guy ends up spending all of eternity floating in the cold vacuum of ever-expanding space. Beating someone who is named Lord Death that can resurrect himself is kind of already like kind of a flex, but when you're just a mere mortal man, and then you do it, it seems like it would be pretty humiliating if you ask me. It would have been more humiliating though if it was Batman using the Bat Rocket to send him into bat space for the rest of Baternity. I apologize for all the bat puns. I know it was a bit of a stretch, but I have to get my daily pun quota out there somehow. And at 8, Green Lantern Corps. In Dark Knight's Metal, we see a very dark version of Batman from an alternate universe within the Dark Multiverse. In that universe, Batman was given a Green Lantern ring. Batman has indomitable willpower, so he was deemed worthy by the ring, which is actually pretty understandable. The power ring came with some protocols though that ensured that no Green Lantern could ever misuse the most powerful weapon in the universe. Batman not only broke those protocols with his will, but he also outsmarted the entire Green Lantern Corps that had come to stop this rogue lantern. So I think it's safe to say this is pretty damn humiliating for the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps, because Batman defeated every lantern that came to stop him. But he had enough willpower to actually break the willpower of the ring, and then he was able to use it for nefarious means. Like, that feels like it would be like the ultimate kick in the gonads. At least like if lanterns themselves had gonads. Can like the collective consciousness of the Green Lantern Corps just like manifest like a giant sack for Batman to kick? Because at this point, that's what he did.
Number 7, War Games. One of the more controversial events in Batman's history. I have a real soft spot for War Games, as it was the era of Batman comics I grew up with, and it sets up a lot of really important future stories in Gotham. When Tim Drake quits the role of Robin, Spoiler, aka Stephanie Brown, takes over the mantle and becomes the first Girl Wonder, not counting Carrie Kelly, who is not canon. Stephanie's run as Robin is short-lived, as her tendency to not follow Batman's orders gets her fired. Wanting to prove herself to the Dark Knight, Stephanie steals one of his contingency plans from the Bat computer, hoping that if she successfully implements it, she will finally be accepted as a member of the Bat family. The plan involves bringing all of the gangs in Gotham City together under one leader that is under Batman's control. Unbeknownst to Stephanie, the chosen gang leader, Matches Malone, is one of Batman's many aliases, so when she sets the plan in motion without Batman's knowledge, Matches doesn't show up to the meeting of the gang leaders. This triggers a massive gang war that crosses over between the Batman titles as well as issues of Robin, Catwoman, Batgirl, and Nightwing. War Games is a brutal Batman story that permanently changes the status quo in Gotham, ending with the Black Mask taking control of Gotham's underworld and leading directly into the Under the Red Hood storyline, which brought back second Robin, Jason Todd. Number 6, Battle for the Cowl. When Batman was seemingly killed in the Final Crisis by Darkseid, the remaining members of the Bat family were given the seemingly impossible task of carrying on without him and keeping Gotham safe. The family is driven into conflict as they argue about how best to carry on Bruce's legacy, and who, if anyone, should take up the cowl and become the new Batman. It's a great run which really breaks new ground for the characters, with Tim Drake, a deranged Jason Todd, and a very reluctant Dick Grayson all throwing their hats in the ring and battling for the right to become the new Dark Knight. It features a lot of great moments for the Bat family, and even has a callback to the infamous cult storyline, with Bruce's video will to Jason talking about how they should have discussed the traumas they had gone through rather than just trying to ignore them and move past them. The story marks the beginning of the excellent period of Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne becoming the new Batman and Robin, and is a must-read for fans of the pre-New 52 Batman. Number 5. Batman Year 1. When Frank Miller signed on to write The Dark Knight Returns, part of his contract stipulated that he must also write a retelling of Batman's origin. Originally conceived as a graphic novel, Miller teamed with artist David Mazzucchelli, with whom he had created the iconic Daredevil Born Again story for Marvel Comics. Due to the poor sales of the monthly Batman title, editor Denny O'Neil convinced Miller to split the graphic novel into 4 parts to be told in Batman numbers 404 through 407. In today's day and age, where we are constantly having to sit through retellings of Batman's origin and watch his parents get killed in front of him like every other week, it can be easy to forget that at the time of Year 1's publication, there had been very few major explorations of Batman's tragic beginnings and early career other than the original story by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. Miller's take on Batman's first year of crime fighting proved so popular that it became the definitive take on Batman's early career and served as major inspiration for several adaptations, including Batman Begins and The Batman. After Year 1, Batman's origin remained mostly untouched until Scott Snyder's 0-year run in 2013, which is also excellent, but it's no Year 1. Seriously, if you're a Batman fan and you haven't read this book, you have to check it out as soon as possible, like right after you finish this video. Number 4. KNIGHTFALL. In the mid-90s, anti-hero characters such as the Punisher were becoming more and more popular with comic book readers. Their willingness to kill their villains while making sarcastic quips were leading many people to wonder if characters with more old-fashioned morals such as Superman and Batman had any place in this new generation. Longtime Batman editor Denny O'Neil came up with the idea of addressing this question head-on by crafting a story where Bruce Wayne was put out of commission and the writers would, quote, take a character with no reverence for human life and put him in the Bat costume. KNIGHTFALL introduces one of Batman's most popular rogues, Bane, who comes to Gotham with the plan of releasing all of Batman's enemies from Arkham so that Batman will be driven to exhaustion and be too weak to defeat Bane when he confronts him. Bane's plan succeeds and culminates in the iconic splash page of him lifting Batman over his head and breaking his back over his knee, leaving Bruce Wayne paralyzed. Although this is the most remembered moment of the book, this is really just the setup for the main story they are telling. Batman entrusts the Batmantle to the vigilante Azrael, who redesigns the Batsuit to be more brutal and dangerous. It's the perfect encapsulation of the 90s, with an over-the-top design and way more pouches than any one man could ever need. Azrael becomes more and more violent, having no problem with killing his enemies. As Bruce recovers from his injuries, he must confront the new Batman in order to reclaim the mantle and draw a line in the sand to say what the Batman legend will mean going forward. KNIGHTFALL is an ambitious story told across several issues of multiple monthly titles, but it honestly sometimes falls down under its own weight, being bloated and meandering at times without a clear sense of what it is trying to say about the characters. It has a lot of great elements, but the idea of telling such a long-form story across different books was improved upon and accomplished with much more cohesion 5 years later in our next entry.
Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Dr. Death. Dr. Death, aka Dr. Carl Helfern, is historically the first supervillain encountered by Batman. In his first appearance in Detective Comics number 29, Dr. Death develops a lethal chemical agent from pollen extract and enacts a plan to use the poison to extort money from wealthy Gotham City citizens. In an attempt to evade capture by Batman, Dr. Death ignites chemicals in his laboratory, presumably killing Jabba, his partner, and himself in the resulting explosion. He comes back in the next issue with the same plan, but Batman intervenes in the plot and upon apprehending the Doctor, discovers that Dr. Death's face is horribly disfigured from the lab explosion, resulting in his whole body having a brown skeletal appearance. But that doesn't stop Batman from basically dismembering this guy in Batman number 29 from 2011, where he just absolutely kicks the out of this hideous creature, saying, "Let me help you with that, this is when I hurt you," and then proceeds to help snap his bones. So yeah, this is like the second worst thing that happened to Helfern, the first being looking like that. Penultimately, in at number 2, Lex Luthor. Close on the heels of the incident of No Man's Land where Lex Luthor tried to unsuccessfully take over the city of Gotham, the DC villain was so angry at Bruce Wayne for ruining his project that he actually cooked up a plan to put Bruce behind bars. Lex approached David Kane, who was upset at Bruce for another reason, and enlisted him to make sure that Bruce would be the main suspect for the murder of Vesper Fairchild, who the millionaire had been seeing for a while. It's actually a plan that works too, for Bruce is eventually eventually arrested for a crime that he didn't commit. It takes Bruce nearly a year to clear his name, but once he does, he gets Lex back in one of the most incredible ways that someone has beat Lex. Batman shows up, beats Luthor down, and then tells him, quote, "You are penniless, Luthor. As of this morning, Bruce Wayne owns this property, and he wants you out of the building." Considering how Luthor's whole identity is wrapped around trying to beat heroes using his tech, losing that tech to Bruce Wayne buying out his building definitely would put a bad taste in his mouth. And finally, in at number 1, Bane. Of all the characters that have broken Batman, Bane is arguably the one who did it the most successfully, because he actually broke him. Everyone loves to talk about the back-breaking beatdown delivered during Knightfall, but the build-up to that saw the masked mercenary preside over the Dark Knight's complete psychological breakdown as well, as he was forced to negotiate a mass breakout of Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Penitentiary. The two would have had their brushes in the following years, but their feud was taken to a whole other level during Tom King's run of Batman in 2016. In that series, Bane had to become dependent on the Psycho Pirate in order to kick his addiction to Venom. Batman also needs the Psycho Pirate though, in order to help Gotham Girl, so he assembles a team along with Catwoman to go to Santa Prisca to abduct him. Bane and Batman fight once again, which actually ends up leading to Bruce suffering another spine-related injury, only for the Dark Knight to deceive Bane by faking a Catwoman double cross, which allows the Feline Fatale to then break Bane's back and complete their plan. So yeah, Bane got his back broken. I mean, Batman didn't do the one that wasn't the one who did the kicking in this instance, but still, he helped. Okay? It's good enough for me.